Welcome to the Church Solutions Podcast, brought to you by JSL Solutions. The Church Solutions Podcast is designed to help equip you and your church in the use of technology and other tools and services. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Lacy and Phil Thompson.
Hi, folks, and welcome to another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast.
Hi, my name is Steve Lacy.
And I'm Phil Thompson, and we come to you every week with this wonderful podcast. Our mission, our vision is to help enable churches and church leaders, volunteers to be able to do their job, and that's kind of why Steve and I do this. We're so glad to be able to be with you here for the next 30 minutes or so. Steve, very quickly, before we get into today's subject, which has to do with Christmas Eve, tell us a little bit about JSL Solutions. What do we have?
So JSL Solutions, as you mentioned, we only serve the church market, and we have four primary products now. We just launched a new one last week that's in our beta phase. We have StreamingChurch.tv to meet your streaming needs, Church App Live, mobile app, and myflock.com, which is website management and church management. And this new thing,
the new one,
we're calling Greeter.Church.
Nice. And
we're an online greeter. We have professional greeters that will greet and welcome everyone that comes to your church website for you.
So the Greeter.Church, that's actually a website. So a lot of people are used to typing in .com, but they would just type in Greeter.Church.
Yep, Greeter.Church. It's going to be free for the rest of the year. I'm not sure exactly what the pricing is going to be next year, but you can use it now and to post a professional greeter on your church website. One of the things that I think confuses some people is we actually provide the host. So you put a little snippet of code on your church website, and we'll support all your visitors through chat and any questions they have and that sort of thing. That's, most of the big businesses have this, so we're extending this capability to ministries.
Awesome. Well, that's awesome. If you need more information, just send us an email, support at Greeter.Church, right?
Yeah, we're still learning it, huh?
Yeah. We can't. It's hard for us to get it. We actually do have a domain, though, right? That is a .com, not to confuse people, but we do have Greeter.Church. We have Greeterchurch.com, right?
Correct.
All right. But either one will get to us, but support at Greeter.Church. And we're excited about it. We've got a few churches using it already, and it's awesome. So we can tell you more about it if you want more information. So enough about that right now. We are a tech company, but we also want to help you in your ministry. And today we're going to talk about Christmas Eve.
Yes, so how to get 16 things to prepare for your Christmas Eve service.
All right, so by the way, tomorrow's Thanksgiving. I don't know how many people will be listening to this on Thanksgiving, but if we miss you on Thanksgiving, hope you had a good Thanksgiving. Very thankful for you, our customers, if you are a customer. And if you're not a customer, we're still thankful for you. But let's talk a little bit about Christmas Eve, because it is coming up here in about a month.
Yeah, so what percentage of churches do you think have Christmas Eve services?
I didn't look up the stats. I did not, but almost every church I know has at least one Christmas Eve service. And I'm limited, obviously, but I've been around the block a few times. So most churches will have a Christmas Eve service. Most will. The big question is, what kind of a service will they have on December 27th, which is just 3 days away, 3 days after Christmas. You got a Sunday right after Christmas.
Yeah, that's 2 days after Christmas, right?
Yeah, so that's a challenge. Of course, we do have that thing where you can do simulated live. We've talked about that before. You could do a simulated live service. You could produce a video and then run a simulated live instead of a real, in-person Christmas service, or I guess day after
Sunday
Christmas.
So give your staff the weekend off after they've just had the major crunch to get through the Christmas Eve service.
Yeah, so if you have questions about that, send us an email. But so let's talk about Christmas Eve, because I have been involved in churches pretty much all my adult life now. You have as well. Christmas Eve, if you're doing a Christmas Eve service or services, it can kind of be a big thing. It can be kind of stressful because you're trying to do something and it's a little bit out of the ordinary. And chances are you have some special things going on. So let's talk a little bit about how you can, hopefully this list will help alleviate some of your stress. And if that's the case, hopefully we can help you with that. So let's just kind of go through the list of some things that you might want to check off and hopefully get you ready for Christmas Eve.
Yeah, and some of these earlier ones may be a little more obvious than others, but number one on our list is volunteers.
Volunteers. Chances are you're going to need more volunteers. You're going to have more people attending your Christmas Eve service than a typical Sunday. Usually that's the case because, as Steve, as you and I both know, a lot of people who don't normally go to church will sometimes go to church, many times go to church for a Christmas service or a Christmas Eve service or an Easter service. So there's a lot of people staying away for whatever reasons. Plus you have family sometimes that's in town. Of course, we're in Tucson, so we get a lot of people coming in because the weather's so nice. And in churches I've been a part of in Tucson, a lot of family shows up from out of town that comes with their family that lives here, And so the chances are you're going to have a lot more people attending your Christmas Eve service than a typical Sunday. So therefore, you're going to need some probably more volunteers to make your service, run smoothly.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So I don't know how, we've talked about different volunteer stuff. It's up to you as far as software. There's, worship planning. There's all that stuff. That's not our intention today to get into any of that stuff, but
you just want to make sure that you've got enough people on hand and
so nursery stuff. We'll talk more details here down the list here, but parking maybe help directing parking, making sure your bathrooms are right.
Yeah, number 2 on our list is parking. Should we jump right into parking?
Sure.
Well, maybe we don't need to talk too much about that, but
may not need to. But parking, depending on your facility, you got to make sure you got enough parking available.
Right. I know that when we launched our brand new facility, for the first few weeks, we were really having to be strategic on the parking.
Yeah.
So one of the things that we did, and I think a lot of the staff, would recognize, is all your regulars and your staff and your volunteers, you let them know, hey, we're going to go park across the street at the somewhere else and leave our whole parking lot for people coming to church.
Yeah.
So
there's creative ways you can do that. You can have your volunteers park somewhere else. Your staff park somewhere else. When I was starting a church in Kansas, we did a grand opening on Easter. We actually did 2 grand openings 2 years in a row, and that's a whole other story. But we actually parked somewhere else. Fortunately, there was some place to park right down the street, so we had a little shuttle going for our volunteers and our staff. And so we opened up our parking lot by creating more spaces. And so that's an important thing to do. Parking is very important. So if you're limited on your parking, then you need to come up with some creative ideas, either shuttle some people or whatever you got to do, park in the dirt or something. We actually expanded our parking lot, and it worked out really well. But anyhow, parking.
All right, so parking is a consideration because you're gonna have a good crowd.
Yeah.
So the other thing is determining the number and the times of the services.
All right, so if you're listening to this podcast on this date here in December, right before Thanksgiving, you're up against a deadline. You really need to, if you haven't decided if you're going to do multiple services, you better pull the trigger now and get the word out. But you may. Our church is not that large, but we actually we actually run 2 Christmas Eve services. We run one at 4:00 in the afternoon. A lot of people are getting off work early, and they want to come to a 4:00 service and then get out of there so they can spend Christmas Eve with their family. But we also have a 5:30 service, so our services obviously are only an hour. It doesn't give you much time to clear out the parking lot and stuff, but we try to end within an hour, sometimes before an hour, and then we start the other one up at 5:30. And again, we're doing that to make it available for some people that may be off work early or off work totally on that day. And then there are some people that, for whatever reasons, can't get off work early, and so, or not very early, so that the 5:30 service can work for them. And so that's just something to throw out there if you haven't done this yet, or maybe for next year.
So you're going to want to decide when they are, and then get the word out, like starting now.
Yeah, if you haven't done that, get the word out, and
right.
That's obviously good. All right, so moving right along here. Number
4, overflow and equipment.
Number 4, overflow and equipment. So again, you could have, if you're doing this right, you should have a pretty good turnout for your Christmas Eve service. So you might expect that you might have more people than your sanctuary or worship center, whatever you want to call it, may hold. So you might be prepared in advance to have some overflow space.
Right.
Plenty of chairs.
Yeah, and it might be a good idea. I mean, as we do, we kind of encourage the core faithful to be the first ones into the overflow, and so that you leave the normal sanctuary area for the less frequent guests.
Yeah, so, that's a very good tip, Steve. And I know we've done that, and you have too. And that is, hey, you got lots of people coming. Those who are regular attenders, you need to probably communicate in advance. Hey, if we have a big turnout, would you please consider going to the overflow area and making room for guests and newer people?
Right.
And that would be a good thing. So you probably ought to make sure you've got your overflow area maybe has plenty of chairs, perhaps some screens with video feed.
Yes.
Don't have that. Sound, at least
important.
Proper sound in there.
Right.
Make sure the volunteers, assist those. So if you're doing the offering or candle lighting, many churches have a Christmas Eve candlelight service. Ours does that. So you want to make sure if you have an overflow area that your volunteers who are helping you with these things like the offering and candle lighting, make sure they they don't forget about the overflow.
Right.
So all right. So
number 5.
Number 5 as we move right along here. Childcare. So you want to make sure you want to really make it clear to your congregation and on any of your advertising, your social media advertising, whatever you're using, that if child care is going to be provided for your Christmas Eve services, you want to make sure you have space for the nursing mothers. And,
right.
And you want to make sure, go ahead.
And you want to just communicate, because a lot of times the Christmas Eve services are intended to be family services where you bring the kids and everybody and there is no child care. Or sometimes they say, well, let's put child care together. So just make sure you communicate what you're going to do.
Yeah, absolutely. You've got to communicate in advance, so do it now if you haven't already, and make sure. Yeah, my church, we generally go ahead and just drag the kids in because we try to make our services kind of for Christmas Eve. We try to make it kid friendly, and
that's I think pretty common. Yeah, it's kind of nice to have the whole family together for Christmas Eve.
And try to give some of your child care workers a little bit of a break if they can. So, all right, moving along here.
Yeah, we got 16, so we're going to have to really cruise. So, if you offer multiple types of services, you need to figure out what you're going to do for your Christmas Eve service. Yeah. So, if you've got a traditional service and a contemporary service, you'll need to figure out what you're going to do for the Christmas service. And I know at our church we've even mixed it up for the Christmas Eve service in that we do contemporary. But on Christmas Eve, we go, I guess you call it folksy, with we'll a lot of times just have an acoustic guitar and one guy leading worship, and then we just sing hymns, Christmas hymns, carols and hymns and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
So
absolutely. So types of services, kind of figure out what you're going to do and go for it. As we move along here, marketing. Our next point is marketing and communication.
Yeah, and we've kind of already talked about this a little bit, but starting next week or in the beginning of December, you need to start putting out the postcards and getting the info communicated, get your website updated, all that sort of thing. Get the word out on what's happening for Christmas Eve.
Right, and remember that a lot of these people, who are considering coming don't normally come to your church maybe a lot, and so make sure you're clear on things. Don't use inside. We used to call this inside language. I think we did a podcast on this. So make sure
Christianese.
Make sure you're communicating things that people understand. But you need to get it going now if you haven't got it by now. All right, number 8.
Number 8, worship team. Just make sure that these guys are organized and have the music set figured out and what they're going to be doing and practice dates and all that stuff figured out, a month in advance or so.
Practice, practice, practice. And we have this little bit of a challenge for us because, we're doing, I don't know about you guys or whoever's listening to the podcast here, but chances are your Christmas Eve service is going to be a little different probably than your regular service. So your team of musicians, they're going to have to kind of practice the order of service, so to speak, as the order of service changes. And, when so-and-so is doing a reading, when so-and-so is lighting a candle, and make sure everybody's on the same page and practice. And, I know you probably don't have a lot of experience with this, Steve, but I used to be a worship leader. Christmas music it's very difficult at times. It's not fun to play. It's challenging. And so it's not the easiest stuff to do, believe it or not. And so you need to put a little extra time and practice in it. And so you need to get on your worship team if you happen to be a leader to kind of get on them in a nice way to, make sure you guys are down on this and get the practice right. So, okay.
Right. So number 9 is our AV or our programming team. Make sure the tech guys are ready and equipped for this special service.
Yeah, this is real important. Because, again, it depends on what kind of church you have, but if you're listening to this Church Solutions podcast, you probably are either involved in tech or your team does tech stuff. So, make sure everybody's on the same page. Make sure you've got things mapped out. I mean, for us, we've got a couple of special videos going, different things that we want to make sure things are loaded up and ready to go, and people know, again, the order of service. Very important.
All right, so number 10, and maybe we spend a minute on this, is tickets.
Yeah, we did this when I was working for your church, I think, once.
Yeah. I maybe done it a couple of times. And the thought of it was kind of like, tickets? I need a ticket to come to church? What is that all about? And basically what it is everyone knows that the services are going to be full and crowded. And we had multiple Christmas Eve services, so at least one year we put together tickets, and basically it wasn't, you didn't have a ticket, they wouldn't let you in the door. No, it wasn't that at all. It was just, it helped out with the planning. Yeah, it's more for the administrators, more for the planning. Right. If you come and you don't have a ticket, I mean, we let people in. Yeah, you get in, even if you don't have a ticket to your service. But it kind of helps. It helps balance the, and help people plan. They go, the later Christmas Eve service, we've given away 300 tickets and our sanctuary holds 300 people. We need to, really push the earlier one. So kind of gives you a feel for what's going to happen. And that's a good way to do it. Yeah, it is. So consider that. I mean, it might be a foreign concept to many of our listeners, but it's something to think about if you have multiple services and you want to get an idea who's coming. And it's not foolproof, but it gives you a little bit of an idea. And the tickets are free. Yeah, they are free. It's just, yeah. But again, if you have, especially if you have 3 services, which I know your church has done, and maybe even more. I think one year I was there, we did 4. But so yeah, it really just helps the administrators. So tickets are something to consider, And anyhow, let's move on here. We're running out of time. We're running out of time. So security, make sure you think about security, especially as we're getting, as things are getting elevated here in the U.S. And churches are a target. So yeah, they are. And that's, we'll just throw that out to you. Think about security. Maybe you've got some police officers that attend your church, or ex-cops, or ex-military, or maybe current military that attend your church. Maybe they would be, maybe you could have a little meeting with a team, put together a team that has a good idea on some things, and just consider that. Okay, here's something that your church used to do. Family photos is another thing to consider. Yeah, for the Christmas service. Yeah. So everyone's, you're going to have the whole family together. They're going to be looking good. So it's a good thing to potentially offer is have a photo booth or a photographer available to take pictures and let people have these pictures for free. Yeah, there you go. Family photos, kind of a fun little thing for Christmas Eve. The next one is charity drive. So December is a great month to participate in, some sort of a charity drive. My church is having
it's interfaith community services, donating food and things. And so we've got a big couple boxes out there. People can, bring something in. So a charity drive, it might be something to consider for your Christmas Eve service. Have somebody bring, either whatever it might be, canned food or something,
Right, exactly.
And then Bible stories for the kids. That's our next one. And so again, we do this. Actually, last year, I myself, towards the beginning of our Christmas Eve service, we brought a big couch up on the platform. We put the Christmas tree up. We kind of decorated our worship center we try to make it really homey with Christmas decorations, and we try to make it kind of like a real intimate setting. And on the stage where the musicians were, it was a challenge, but we did this. We actually put a big couch on there, and we had kids come up, and they sat with me on the couch, and I opened up a big book, and I read a Christmas story for just a couple minutes to the kids.
Yeah.
So something to consider.
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Yeah, Bible story maybe, or whatever you might want to have for your kids.
The real meaning of Christmas is explained to the kids, and the big kids in the audience will get it too.
That's right, with Uncle Phil. And I pulled out a pipe and put on a... No, I didn't do any of that. Anyhow.
So we got 2 more on our list.
Very quickly, Advent calendar. Our church doesn't really do an Advent deal, but there's Advent calendar, and some churches do that. We're talking about lighting Advent candles and those kind of things. So it's probably, I can't remember, I think it's 25 days leading up to Christmas, I think, is Advent. And so, keep that in mind, perhaps, to put online and to post to lead up to your Christmas Eve service, maybe,
Right. And special service elements.
Yeah, special service elements. Go ahead.
We're at this service. Things like having a nativity set up, hot chocolate, carolers singing, just the special stuff that you might have.
Candle lights.
Yeah, enrich your service.
Yeah, I know at the end of ours we do a little thing where everybody gets a candle, and we light the candles, and the whole congregation eventually, each person lights the other person's candle with their deal. And
that's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun. And it's kind of fun, and it's very intimate. And we sing like Holy Night, I think, together at the end. And so something to do. But special elements. So think about special elements. If you haven't thought about it already, make sure you've got them. Like I know one year for us, we had those little candles everybody would hold, and we said, we got plenty of those from last year, and we went to pull them out. I think it was like a week or 2 before Christmas. We actually pulled them out, and they got hot, and they had melted. And so we had all these little candles that we thought we could use were kind of warped and melted. And so we had to scramble to grab some more little candles. So make sure you check for your elements, your special service elements now, to make sure you've got everything, even if you think you already have it, because it's probably been in storage for a year. And who knows what it looks like now. All right.
We made it.
We're out of time here. So, folks, if you have some questions, you can always send us an email, support@StreamingChurch.tv. And again, we hope that you have a great holiday season with Thanksgiving and Christmas. And if we can help you, if anything, that's what we're here for. You can check our Church Solutions podcast out on iTunes, or as we were talking last week, Steve, any podcast provider.
Any your favorite podcast player, just look for Church Solutions in the podcast listing.
So look for Church Solutions podcast and a podcast deal, or you can find us at StreamingChurch.tv. I think we have our podcast in there somewhere under resources. We're under New Media. What's that?
Yeah, you're right. I was just agreeing.
You're just agreeing with me? Okay, good. NewMediaMinistries.tv is another one. You can check us out on, and we usually put the audio version of this on YouTube. It's just audio, but you can always go to YouTube, look under StreamingChurch.tv, and you'll probably find our Church Solutions podcast. So, all right, so that about wraps it up. We went through a list there. Hope your Christmas Eve goes great, and we're done, right, Steve?
We are done. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving if you happen to catch us on Thanksgiving or before or afterwards, and happy holidays, happy Christmas, happy New Year, and all that good stuff. But we'll catch you next time on another edition of the Church Solutions Podcast. Take care.